In this video, I'm going to show you how to place the tie rod adjusting sleeve on this Ford Excursion that goes between the driver's side outer tie rod and the passenger side outer tie rod. This does affect the toe alignment of your vehicle, so you want to get an alignment after this job is done. Let's get started. Use a 21mm socket and remove all 8 lug nuts, and then we can pull the wheel off. Let's loosen up the sleeve clamps that hold down these two tie rods, or lock them in, I should say. I'm using a 17mm wrench on the mounting nut that's on the back here, and a 19mm socket on the bolt side. For you, this could be spun in any other direction depending on your alignment. So just use whatever sockets and tools fit your setup and loosen these up a little bit. You don't have to remove these, you just have to give them some space. Do the same to the other clamp. All right. Let's also loosen up this clamp that sits on the passenger side tie rod, just because it has this tab that goes all the way to these other clamps and prevents them from spinning. Using a 13mm wrench or socket, loosen up the mounting nut that locks it in. Tap it with a hammer if needed, if it's stuck. You don't have to take this mounting nut off just like the other two clamps. You just have to give it enough space so it can move around. All right, that should be plenty. Let's push it back. All right, now that that's out of our way, we can continue, and we are ready to spin this sleeve. Remove the cotter pin off of the outer tie rod. Sometimes if your cotter pin doesn't come out, what you can do is just cut it flush with the stud and then hammer a socket over the nut. Now let's use a 21mm and remove this nut. Now what you want to do is use a hammer, tap the side of the knuckle right here where the stud goes through. That'll break the stud free from the knuckle and will allow us to pull the tie rod stud right out. There it goes. Lift it up. Optionally, you can use a pry bar and a hammer. Go right in the split of this sleeve. That'll actually open it up as you stick the pry bar in there, or a chisel, whatever you have that'll open this sleeve up in case your tie rod is stuck in there. Mine actually seems to be moving just fine, which is great. So I'm going to unthread this, turning it counterclockwise. I'm going to count the amount of turns it takes to remove it so that when I put it back, I can put it on the same amount of turns and get close to an okay alignment. Still going to need to get it aligned, but it'll get me close. Here we go. "29 turns for me. Of course, it's going to be different for you. There's the outer tie rod. I'm going to put a pry bar in the sleeve here and hammer it in. This will help me spread this open so it can spin a little bit easier, and that way I can remove it off of the other tie rod. Now this is reverse threaded. Keep that in mind. So when you take this off, turn it to the right as you're looking at it to unthread it. "28 turns for me. That's normal. It should be about the same, if not exactly the same, as the outer tie rod, because you want these clocked in identically. I'm going to use a wire brush just to clean up these threads a little bit. They weren't too stuck or too rusted, but I want them as clean as I can. If you need a wire wheel to do this on a drill, go ahead and use that. I recommend coating this with some anti-seize, that way it doesn't corrode in the future. I recommend putting a little bit of anti-seize inside of this sleeve as well for the same reasons. You don't want it corroding and getting stuck. Now when putting this tie rod sleeve on, you want to make sure that the side you're putting on the passenger side has a little L stamped on it. That means left-handed threads. And put it on the same amount of turns it took to remove it. Once again, that way you can get close to a decent alignment. All right about there is where it was before. This is where I'm going to stop. Of course, it still needs to be adjusted. It's time to install the other tie rod. Take your outer tie rod and apply some anti-seize to these threads. Also apply some inside the sleeve. This will prevent it from rusting and corroding in the future. And thread this on the same amount of turns it took to remove it. There we go. Let's put this tie rod stud in the knuckle. Bring this over, line it up, press it in, install the new castle nut. We'll snug it up. Torque this to 66 foot-pounds. This being a castle nut, you want to make sure that the slot lines up for the cotter pin. Always tighten and never loosen these to get them to line up. For me, it looks like the hole is actually below the mounting nut, so I'm going to stop right here. This is torqued. Install a new cotter pin, and of course, bend it over to lock it in. There we go. Once you're sure that the sleeve is positioned or adjusted correctly and your tie rods are positioned correctly, let's tighten these bolts up. These new mounting nuts are 15 millimeter in size, so use a socket or wrench that fits and tighten them up. Make sure this stays centered. .41 foot-pounds is the torque for both of these mounting nuts. There's one. And there's the second one. These are locking nuts, so this is tight. Now let's move this clamp with the tab over into this one. So wherever you have these positioned, make sure that this lines up. There we go. Right about here, this tapers down. And you want this clamp to be right before it starts tapering down. Let's snug this back up. Use that 13 millimeter wrench or socket, whatever fits for you. I can't fit a torque wrench in here because of my differential, but if you had this in a different position, it still wouldn't have to be tightened very much. You just need to squish this down a little bit so it can hold on. Let's get the wheel back on. Put on all 8 lug nuts. We'll bottom them out in a cross pattern to seat the wheel evenly. And then also in a cross pattern, we're going to torque them to 148 foot-pounds. .148 foot-pounds in a cross pattern. Here we go. After finishing this repair, it's important to have an alignment done on your vehicle. Double check them if you'd like. Take it for a road test.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.